It's like a light strategy game, with your animal hybrids, but you're, trying to avoid cow poop.
Charlottesville is home to many successful and budding entrepreneurs. After making his mark in the custom-built guitar industry, our guest today decided to try his hand at creating board games. Turns out he's pretty good at that too. Join us as we catch up with Brian Calhoun, creator of Chickapig. Come on.
You want to get your Chickapigs, all 6 of them, across the board and escape through the goal on the other side. And the first player to do that wins the game.
All right, tell me about all the different types of pieces and to the game and what they do and what they don't do.
Okay, so your Chickapigs, they move in a straight line until they hit something. I like to say it's like a rook in chess with no breaks.
Okay.
So what happens is when it's your turn, if you're blue, you roll a die and you see how many total moves you get.
Okay.
And so what I mean by a straight line until you hit something, one move would be like until you hit a hay bale. Or if you had rolled a 2, you could go 1 and then 2 going this way, you would go all the way to the end of the board.
Right.
You're not allowed to just stop wherever you want. Okay,
Right.
now the hay bales move 1 at a time. So the basic fundamental of the game is coordinating those 2 movements, your Chickapigs and your hay bales, to work yourself across the board and get through the goal. So I can give you an example. If I'm blue and I go first and I roll a 6, I can get in a few different ways, but the easiest would be 1, which puts me in this open line.
Okay.
Now 2 would bring me all the way to here, which I don't want to do.
Right.
So I'm going to give it a blocker.
Okay.
2. And then 3.
Okay.
Okay, now I want to stop in front of the goal. I don't want to go to the end of the board.
Right.
So I'm going to go 4, 5,
Oh, yay.
6. And that's
Oh,
how you get
yay.
your Chickapigs off of the board.
Okay, and right here you've got a cow.
Okay, so the cow comes into play when you roll a 1. You can remove the fence. You get to pick up the cow and place the cow on any square on the board. And when you do, that is when the cow leaves a poop behind, just like this. Now, anybody that goes through the poop, like so if blues work themselves around and they go through the poop, they're gonna go right over it. The poop will come off the board and they will then have to take a poop card, which is
Poop card.
always bad, of course.
Always bad.
Yeah.
Poop is bad. Brian, you co-founded and you build Rockbridge Guitars, custom-made guitars. What inspired you then to create a board game?
Well, the board game couldn't be farther away from the guitars that we build. And at the time when I came up with the board game, I had 0 thoughts of turning it into another business. But it was basically, I played a really boring board game with some friends and I was just kind of complaining about the game and, why do people want to play this? How does this sell? And I happened to read the side of the box and it said it had sold like a zillion copies. And I proclaimed, I'm going to make a board game. Of course, my friends are like, whatever, man. So it wasn't immediate, but like a few months later, I started to think, I wonder if I could. And still with no ambitions of turning it into a business. And then Chickapig popped into my mind.
I love that. Yeah, that just happens to me all the time too. Chickapig just pops into my mind.
Pretty much. While I was driving down the road, I sort of pictured the way these pieces could move together and went home with, a sheet of cardboard and some scissors and a chessboard at the time. And after about a week, I had, I guess, the groundwork of Chickapig.
And then the process, talk about your process for developing the game and testing it out, because it's very different from how a lot of other board game creators function and get to where they are.
I think one of the big differences is it started sheerly as a hobby. I mean, even after I got it going, I still wasn't trying to turn this into a business. And so in the early days, it was, can I make something that my friends are going to like? And then I made 10 copies and that was going to be it, and handed them out to my good friends. And we had a summer of like playing Chickapig all the time. And then I'd find out people were playing when I wasn't there. And I was like, maybe people like this. And I started to think maybe I can, sell some copies of this at the farmer's market. But it was still like not to have a business. It was fun to like figure out the process.
Right.
And so here we are on one hand making extremely high-end custom guitars that take a lot of work and love into each one.
Right.
And on the other end, I'm manufacturing as many Chickapigs as I can possibly make as fast as I can make them.
And you eventually you hired friends, and your mother stamped 50,000 stickers.
Yes, my mother put 50,000 stickers on wooden discs in my first big production run of 1,000 games. And she loved it. And not only was it this long, long journey of how to make the pieces, and sort of from me making them to my mom making them to hiring other companies to making them, but the developing was sort of the same thing. It was, my group of friends. We found ways at a local bar at Cardinal Hall where at first it was people I knew, but as we grew this Chickapig night, we'd get like 100 people a week coming out here that I didn't know and play, and I could go and ask, hey, what do you think of the cow? What do you think of this?
Yeah.
Everything from sort of how the pieces feel to what a card says. And at the time we were doing that, we weren't even selling the game. It was just sort of growing this random thing.
And who did you find, who plays Chickapig?
This is one of the great sort of lapses in my brain when I look back and, how did I think a chicken-pig hybrid with a cow that poops on the board was going to be a big hit amongst adults when I was overlooking like the real place that it was going to live. And I remember there was this major change in not only the marketing of the game but the way that I thought about the game, where we were at a local festival, the Festi actually.
Festi, right.
Yeah, and we had a tent set up, and we were planning to sort of replicate what we'd done in the bars in Charlottesville. And it was just filled with kids. Like there was nobody over the age of 12, and they were going crazy, and they were loving it, and parents were coming up.
And you're like, duh.
Yeah, it's like literally a light bulb.
Well, and it resonated with the students at VIA.
Yes.
Talk about that experience.
And that was another really big turning point for me in sort of the way that I approached Chickapig. The Virginia Institute of Autism reached out and asked if we had a few games we could donate to a fundraiser. And I said, well, could I come in and maybe show the kids how to play? And I went in, and the first time I went in was such an amazing experience, because these kids are awesome, and they picked the game up instantly. And we sat there and we played Chickapig for an hour. But the feedback that I got from the teachers was that the students there were playing Chickapig during their free time instead of the giant screen video. And what they were saying is, to me, you don't understand. They're choosing to sit together and play this game. And that is, a big part of, what you want to do with autistic children. And so it was amazing. But what this whole little period of time did with all the kids, it really made me think, okay, there's some good in this, because it's kind of funny, to be putting so much time into something so silly, you know what I mean? And I've wondered sometimes why I do this, but that to get feedback from parents who say, my kid's putting down their cell phone and playing this game, with his family, and that never happens. And to get the feedback from the teachers who say, hey, this is really good for critical thinking skills. And
yeah.
It made me think wow, this is sort of worth putting time into, and made me fall in love with the whole, concept a lot more than I had before that.
So let's talk about the response to the game on a national level, because a lot of good things have been happening with the game. So it's in Target, it's in Walmart, it's been one of the top games on Amazon.
Yes, it's been sort of surprising and very exciting to see how quickly it's grown after 5 years of moving very, very slowly.
Yeah.
It was definitely like one of these.
Yeah, and we got to talk about Dave too, Dave Matthews. So when and why did he get involved too? So he's been involved in the game. He's a huge fan.
Yeah. So Dave's a close friend of mine, and when I mentioned that early summer of all those Chickapig nights, a lot of those Chickapig games were with Dave and his family and our mutual friends, and we were just playing all the time. And he gave me a lot of advice, and said he'd really like to help me with it. And so he's my partner in Chickapig, along with a couple other buddies, and he gets involved in the details, which is a lot of fun.
And now you have a book.
Yes.
Little Joe Chickapig.
so many times I'd see, children playing Chickapig and the like younger brothers and sisters who couldn't quite get it. And I knew like I wanted something for this younger group, you know. And a good friend of mine said, you gotta write a book. And it was another one of those light bulb moments. What it did is it added personality to one of the characters. And the game and all the marketing to the game up at that time had just been like, sort of mindless animal hybrids running into things, where little Joe has a story that I think is a really good story for kids.
So the premise of the story is
following his dreams.
Follow your dreams.
Yeah, definitely. The book was received well and really just opened up a lot of doors as, we make other Chickapig games and toys and things, to build like around this character base versus just one game.
So what would be your advice? Send us out with advice for fellow and up-and-coming entrepreneurs. What would you say?
Well, there's lots of ways to do it, but I think the way that I've done it anyway is starting with a hobby. I mean, with the guitars, I loved guitars. I started building instruments in high school.
And you're still doing all that.
Oh yeah, it's great. Like the first time I could play an instrument that I made was the greatest. And even after we started the guitar company, I mean, it was like I would have been doing it anyway. And it's another example of if I was doing it because I, wanted to start a business and I was like looking for something to start a business with, I would have quit a long time ago, because it is a struggle. Every business, even the ones that are perceived as just, out of the gate rocking, there's so much that goes on.
So you have to start with something you love.
I would say start with something you love, do it because you love it, and don't give up. And that's
how little Joe Chickapig.
Right, just like little Joe Chickapig, that's right.